Hi everyone, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe to this channel for more concise videos about interesting watches such as this one. This is a Hamilton Intramatic, if you're not familiar with it. The Intramatics were actually originally a line of watches, I believe, made in the 60s by Hamilton, and Hamilton about maybe close to a decade ago reintroduced some models under the Intramatic name based on 1960s styling, and they were originally available, I believe, only in silver and black dials. I did do a video covering them on the channel previously, so if you're interested to see those and learn more about them, you can find the video on my channel. From the introduction of these modern Intramatics, they have been available in only two sizes, at least for the non-chrono versions, which are 38 millimeter and 42 millimeter. The one shown here is 42 millimeters, and as you know, due to the fact that there's virtually no bezel around the glass, the watch does wear very large, even for a 42 millimeter. So I want to cover some of the strengths and weaknesses of this watch. I will start by saying this is actually one of the watches that I have that gets quite a lot of compliments from people who are not necessarily into watches, more so than many watches that are coveted by collectors. So it's just something interesting to make note of. Strengths of this watch to me, well, I think number one is the design. I think it's objectively quite a clean and simple design. To me, it's quite beautiful. I think if you are a fan of 1960s styling, you would certainly appreciate this watch. It really has very clean lines on the case, a nice simple dial, and also a very appropriate bracelet. The bracelet is quite well finished, I think, for a watch of this price point. Very well articulating links, and as a result, quite comfortable. Another key positive of this watch is this beautiful curved sapphire crystal and the very thin case, as you can see here, extremely thin for an automatic. And yet another positive is the particular automatic movement used here. This is a ETA 2892. As I've mentioned in other videos, I really greatly prefer 2892 based movements over 2824s. In my ownership experience, I found them to be more reliable, really consistently smooth winding. They do allow for thinner watches, and I just think they're a more refined movement than the 2824. So, especially in this sort of, in the 500 price range, I think that's a nice thing to see in a watch. I also think, as another positive, they paid some nice attention to detail, like the date window on this watch. If you see here, the date dial is black with white lettering. So many times you see, on the watches of this price range, they'll have a beautiful black dial and then throw on a white date wheel, I guess for money-saving reasons, but really, hurting the overall look of the watch. And they didn't do that here. So here's another look at the bracelet. As I mentioned, really well finished for the price, I have to say. Those links, articulate really smoothly, and the watch is very comfortable on the wrist. Now there are some negatives as well, which I wanted to cover. And number one is, while the dial is beautiful, it's really not very legible. As you can see from some of the angles I hold the watch, even in clear light, sometimes you cannot tell the time. There's no lume. The color of the markers and hands is not, does not contrast tremendously with the actual dial color. So that's a big negative. And also the lack of a seconds hand, which is something that all the modern Intramatics have, or all of them lack, I should say. And it's just a shame when it's such a wonderful automatic watch like this to not just include that. Even if it added a millimeter in case height, I think I think that's a unfortunate omission by Hamilton. I think it would make the watch more beautiful, and I would venture to say that it would sell a lot better as well if they had included that. But here's the watch on the wrist. As I said, it wears very large. I do not have a big wrist, and you can see just how much of the dial surface area covers the wrist. I think the largeness of the watch, however, is quite offset by the thinness. By that I mean, even though the watch is, quite large in diameter and appears even more so because of the lack of a, wide bezel, the fact that the watch is so thin reduces the overall bulk and therefore somewhat counteracts the large glass. I personally don't have a problem wearing, a watch this size. I think outside of the watch collector community, this is a very normal size today. I think a lot of people, as I said, who are not collectors would gravitate to watches like this. So I don't think you'd look out of place at all wearing something like this, even if you have a small wrist. This really comes down to, your taste. That being said, if I had a 38 millimeter version of this, I would probably prefer that. And I would say probably for most people that would work even better. It just so happens I had the 42 millimeter available to review here. So thank you for watching. Please leave any comments below.